Welcome to the Nick, Dick, and Paul Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nick Bilton, and we are recording remotely. Dick, do you want to tell us where you are?
I am Dick Costolo, coming to you live from my own personal library in Soho, New York.
What's the book right behind you with the goat?
You know what's not important right now?
Good answer.
It's from the goat section of the library.
The library. Everyone. Who among us?
Everyone should have a goat section.
I got a cloven hoof section, okay?
Paul, where are you?
I am in San Diego, although I was just spent like the last 36 hours in Florida. And as a friend of mine reminded me when I was there, I actually didn't go on the beach and I didn't touch the ocean, just on principle.
What's the principle of not touching the ocean?
I reject the existence of Florida.
Were you there for fun or for work?
I was speaking actually semi-related to something I think we're going to talk about, but I was there for a Federal Reserve. They have the Atlanta Fed has an annual event on technology and capital markets risk. So they have a 2-day event, and I spoke at that yesterday on
the Atlanta Fed meeting is in Florida.
Yeah, are we talking about the Atlanta, Florida Fed or a different?
No, this is like a McDonald's franchise. It's the Atlanta franchise or the Florida franchise of the Atlanta Fed. They have different burger prices.
Can I just go back to, do you ontologically reject the idea of Florida, or do you sort of just, I've refused to admit I'm here, and if I go to the ocean, it'll be more obvious to me that I'm here?
It's really the latter, although I would like to say it's the former. But it's a good point.
Perfect.
I can't actually, I have to believe it actually was there because I felt like I was there and I was really freaking hot.
I'm going to start using the word ontologically all the time.
I would. I think it's an important word to use. Yeah. But yeah, we were talking about, so there was a 2-day event. There was a bunch of people talking about central banking, which makes the top of my head fall off. And then we were talking about what's going on in AI, these upcoming IPOs. It was actually a good discussion because you got to find out that, well, it's a little bit like finding out your babysitter is really not that much more competent than you are at managing the kids, but in a capital markets context.
Can I just ask, when people in central banking have a discussion about central banking, what is, like, give us a look inside, behind the curtain, if you will, at what an insider discussion about central banking would be about.
And then the second to that, I want to add, can you give us a discussion about what they discuss when they're not talking about central banking?
No, central banking.
Oh,
it continues.
Okay. Right.
There's no stopping. Central banking is a bottomless cascade. So anyways, what do they talk about when they talk about central banking?
Yeah.
They talk about it starts with a song, right? There's the official song, "We Are All Central Bankers." And then it goes on from there. No, none of that happens. Absolutely none of that happens. But yeah, it's weird because honestly, I mean, central banking is a bit of a mystery to me. So I tried very hard for the first 2 sessions to pay attention. And then I was like, I have a session coming up in an hour or two, and I haven't finished my slides, so I need to go. So I didn't learn that much about central banking, and then came back here.
That's sad.
Let me ask you a question. What you mentioned AI. Where do they all sit in terms of AI, job loss, economy? Like, are they?
Yeah, let us know, because whatever they think, the other thing will be what happens.
Right. Exactly. That's sort of the. I think that's the right way to go. No, they're very.
Are they head in the sands? Like, where are they?
So here's the thing. They're very concerned about it because they actually have decent economists who model the effect of automation on workforces. So I actually think that side of what they do is very good. And the Atlanta Fed has tremendous researchers on that stuff. The problem they have is they have no idea how to deal with the effect of AI on capital markets themselves. So what's going to happen when you have this bevy, and that's the technical term, of AI IPOs coming out? What's the implications going to be? What don't we know in terms of, one of the things I was talking about was how AI is going to cause what's called herding in capital markets. It's going to make it more easy for people to imitate each other, which creates cascades in capital markets, which in turn creates flash crashes and what have you. So that was sort of my topic, that structurally it's going to have implications in terms of risk in capital markets. And again, not too different from what's happened in the past. but huge, much faster, much more consequential because these things are evolving in real time and so on. And so I was using that as an example in my talk about, what we should expect in terms of a much more fragile and a wacky capital markets in the future.
Is there any discussion when you guys are doing these meetings about, we're going to talk about IPOs today, OpenAI, SpaceX.
Is OpenAI going public?
They are. They announced.
They just filed.
They just filed.
I'm just
confidential filing.
talking out of my ass.
Got it. Is there any discussion about economic disparity? With the IPO that's about to happen with SpaceX, pretty much everyone is estimating that Elon will become the first trillionaire, which is kind of astounding to say out loud. All jokes aside,
thank God. Because
he deserves it.
That guy has been.
I thought it was going to be you,
grinding.
Dick. I was really betting on you.
It was touch and
close.
go.
Close.
It was close.
Pretty close, right?
I was
You know,
right
it's the
there.
it's the magic of compound interest. If you'd give me another 100 years, I'm there. Okay, maybe more than 100. But there's a lot of conversation about that. But the main thing, weirdly, that they're interested in is literally what's going to be the impact on capital markets themselves, because that's what they regulate, right? So they're interested in, what's going to happen when the supply comes to market? What is the impact of a larger versus smaller float and all this kind of stuff? Because this is really, really unusual for a bunch of reasons that we can get into. And that's the stuff that actually was a good conversation. And I talked to a few. They actually have some external people there who run, in excess of like $400 or $500 billion in large index funds, who were there to as part of the conversation. And these guys are like shitting themselves, and they're shitting themselves
because
they're forced buyers, right? Meaning that once these things are added,
if it's added to the index, they have to buy.
I have to buy it. And so this is a huge problem because they're going to be a material fraction of these indices over the next 3, 6, 12 months. And I'm a forced buyer, and that means I'm a forced seller of other things to fund being a forced buyer. So these flows are very consequential. And then the limited float makes it even worse. Anyways, there's other stuff comes up.
Can we talk about that for a second? The limited float on SpaceX, I believe, is only 5% of the total.
Can you guys
shares.
just for the people who are listening who are not attending the same conferences as Paul, can you explain the limited float and what the consequences are of that?
Why don't you talk, Dick? I was actually thinking about you in this context today. What was the float when Twitter went out?
I think it was 10%. 70 of 70.
And who decided that? Do you remember?
I mean, who do you think decided it?
The idiot bankers?
The big mocker in the room.
No, you didn't.
No, I'm kidding.
I was just saying, there's no chance it was you.
I was just kidding. I didn't have anything to do with that stuff.
Goldman?
No, we went through Goldman and who was lead left, and my CFO and I had long discussions about it. And,
but wait, Dick,
it was a 70 million share float specifically.
Yeah. Can you explain how it works?
Yeah. Sure. For people who have or haven't read the GOAT book behind me.
I'm not sure the answer to that.
Or the people who have or haven't been Twitter CEO.
Yeah, there you go. Probably more people have been Twitter CEO than they read the GOAT book.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For the very few people left who haven't been one of the Twitter CEOs, I'll describe it for you. The float is essentially you have some number of shares. Let's just say it's, for the sake of ease, there's 100 total shares in the company, and the investors have 40 shares, and the CEO has 5 shares, and the employees have options to buy, another 10% of the shares. And you're about to go public. What you do is you issue more new shares, and if you have, if you have 100 shares and you want to hey, we're going to issue, another 10%, and you make those available to the public, make those available in the IPO, you go out for 2 weeks before the IPO and you try to drum up demand for those 10 shares. Obviously it's a lot more shares than that. It's tens of millions of shares. And again, in the case of the Twitter IPO, it was 70 million shares. And in fact, what you try to do is you try to generate many, many times multiple of the 70 million shares that you're going to issue. So you're trying to get, Fidelity to sign up for 30 million shares and Janus to sign up for 40 million shares, and on and on and on. And there are dozens and dozens of these institutions that you go talk to.
Yeah.
And we had, I think we were something like 50 times oversubscribed. And what that enables you to do is the night before the IPO, you actually say, okay, I'm going to give Fidelity, 7, I'm going to give Janus 2, and then, the bankers.
But it has to add up to the 10.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah, it has to add up to the 10%. In the case of, and so what a large float versus a small float means is, in SpaceX's case, only issuing 5% new shares. What that does is you're going to have crazy demand because it's the hottest IPO in a long, long time. And Elon's painting this narrative about the future of the company, and we're going to go to Mars and have data centers in space, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're only issuing 5% of the new shares and you've got this crazy demand, what happens when you have a lot more demand than supply? Opening morning, which we've seen with Figma and Cerebras and on and on and on, opening morning price goes through the roof because people just start bidding it up from the moment it's about to open. And the bankers are, trying to, before the stock even opens, the bankers are trying to, gin up the price by pumping it and having their salespeople on the phone with customers and, hey, I've got, this is going quickly, but I can get you this many shares of SpaceX, but the price is going up. You got to commit now. I'm not sure when it's going to open. All this stuff that you would do to hype the thing. So what ends up happening is you have these big, particularly with a small float, and then I'll shut up. You have these big opening day pops, as they call them, where, hey, we priced it at so-and-so, but the price at the end of the day ends up being 2-3x that. You could end up with the SpaceX day one trading at over $2 trillion, I think.
I think you will.
Which seems crazy, which even like 3 months ago, people were like, well, it's not going to be over like 1.5 trillion. I think I agree.
I think it'd easily be over.
Yeah, I think it'll be over $2 trillion.
One quick question.
In market cap, in total.
Yeah. Nothing. You're right. Total gross market cap.
I remember when you did the Twitter IPO, it did pop. But when Facebook's IPO, it hit the floor, and the bankers had to hold it at the floor. Why were those different versus?
Well, what you want people always have narratives in retrospect. What you really want is to, what you price the shares the night before. So in Twitter's case, we price them at $26, and the people get to buy them at $26. And I'm not going to overcomplicate any of this with the green shoe and all this nonsense because we could spend another half hour on that. So setting that aside,
From the green shoe.
You price them at $26, and if the price in the morning pops to $45, I think we opened at like $43. Your investors and your team and everyone's like, well, you raised $26 times 70 million. You raised that much money, But the price opened at $43. You're stupid. You should have priced the shares at $43 because there's obviously demand of $43, and then you would have made almost twice as much money in your IPO. But now, that money's been left out to the people who bought the shares at $26 and turned around and flipped them at the opening bell and blah, 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 blah. So a lot of people would tell you Facebook actually had a great IPO because they priced the shares to perfection and made as much money as there was demand for. Mm-hmm. So they got all that money themselves instead of leaving a bunch of money on the table to have an opening day pop, which looks good but doesn't help the company.
Now,
that's a really good point, though. I mean, because people try to have it both ways. That if there's a pop, they say you left money on the table. If there isn't a pop, they say, "Wow, you just mispriced it." And it's like, dude, you can't have it both ways. One or the other is the right thing.
Going to what's going to happen in the next few weeks with SpaceX and OpenAI. What is the strategy from those companies? Because we do know it's going to pop. So how are they going to price it, and versus if it wasn't?
It doesn't matter what they price it at.
It doesn't matter.
No, it'll be, and this is part of the problem is because it's such a strong, like a story stock. This is not like buying Black & Decker. This is buying something that people feel like is the future, whether it's space or AI or whatever else. And when you get a small float, strong narrative, marquee names, those kinds of things, the price is honestly irrelevant. It's just a thing. And so,
who better to price? Who better to be out there on CNBC the morning that it goes public than Mr. Narrative? I mean, Elon is as we have seen with Tesla year after year after year. He's the master. The guy is just really, really good at selling the narrative. And the next, yeah, this is happening right now, but wait till you see what's going to happen, next year. And he just is great. He's obviously great at that, as evidenced by Tesla's market cap versus, its numbers.
But here's the thing, though, that I was pointing out this is what I was talking about at the Fed thing, is that the comparisons to the .com hot IPOs is wrong now. And the reason is that the market is structurally hugely different now from what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and people have missed it. And the market is structurally very different. And the big difference is, quiz question, 10 points.
Yeah.
Index funds. And so the big difference is index funds, because something like 35% of the US market are passive investors now. It was like 10, 12 back then. So it's like 35 to 40% is index funds. Index funds are passive investors. They're not doing what they call in the business price discovery. They're like, I don't care what the price is. All I know is if it's X% of a market cap weighted index, I need that percentage of it. And then it gets worse. It gets more circular, right? Because if I know that they know, then I know I should be buying the stock in advance of them, because the higher it goes, the more they have to buy, right? And so you get this, used to be called index arbitrage, but this isn't like index arbitrage. It's more like, the scene in Oppenheimer where like Teller says, like, if we don't stop doing this, we're going to like burn down the atmosphere or something. This is like burn down the atmosphere stuff, because there's no end to that when passive index investors are half the market. They must buy it at any price to fill out the portfolio at index weight. And there's been an accommodation made under the rules to allow this thing to be into the indices much faster than usual. Yeah. So that's going to happen, and it's going to happen at kind of an atmosphere burning scale.
Let's just help people understand that piece of it for a second, because what Paul just mentioned is important. It used to be the case, I believe this was the case, it used to be the case you had to wait at least a year before you could be added to the S&P 500 or the, pick your favorite index. And what's been happening recently is a bunch of lobbying on behalf of these, IPOs that we were talking about here coming to market. Like, hey man, why wait? Obviously It's going to be part of the S&P 500. Let's just, and this index and that index, and let's just get it in there ASAP. Well, the tragic flip side of that is what Paul's just describing here. You're jamming it into the indices right away with a tiny float that's going to already drive up demand around what we know is going to be a crazy narrative that may come true next week, may come true in 10 years.
And the weird thing is,
you run into this problem Paul's describing.
Wait, Paul.
Even if they hadn't changed the rules, though, this would have happened anyway, as the perversity, because for the reason Dick just said, which is these things are so big. They're not doing SpaceX a favor per se. This is just math. At the market cap, SpaceX is likely to come to market. Whether it's in the index in 3 months or 12 months, the effect in terms of being able to front run all these passive investors is the exact same. It just happens at a relatively sooner date. But the same crush of people saying, I know these guys have to buy it. I know they have to buy it in huge scale. The supply is constrained. This is going to be terrific. I'll front run the bastards.
When we've talked offline about how worried you are about these IPOs. Can you explain why? Now that you know the float size, now that you know the revenues and so on and so forth, what are you worried about and why?
Well, exactly this idea that because of this feedback loop,
spell out the worst case scenario.
Burn the atmosphere. No, that's not really true. Although it'd be interesting. Yeah. No, so because of this feedback loop. So the feedback loop means the higher the price goes, the higher the price goes. Not because of a momentum thing, like some wacky momentum dude's driving it higher. No, but because half the market are passive investors who are buying what are called market cap weighted indices, meaning that the higher your market cap is, the larger a share of the index you are. So I have to buy more of you as your market cap goes up. There's no end to that process if the company is large enough. You're creating a forced cycle of buyers where every new buyer creates a new buyer, and the thing gets bid up to extreme levels to fill out this position in the index for no other reason than algorithmic, right? Because of being gaming, they're going to be added to indexes. And so that's a much more troubling phenomenon than even if they'd done a large float. Because if they do a large float, let's flip this around. If you do a large float, what are we worried about then? Well, we're worried that a much larger piece of it comes public, there's more liquidity, but that also means the buying happens sooner, right? Because all of a sudden now there's far more shares out there, the marginal buyer can get stock. And so that's going to pull money from other places, right? So all of a sudden it's going to be like, grandma's ETF. It's like, wait a minute, Google's not doing so well. I thought they were doing well. And it's like, no. You sell the most liquid names to fund your purchase of SpaceX because you can, right? Not because I hate Google. So all kinds of very strange things are going to start happening at huge scale because of these second order effects. Weirdly enough, it doesn't matter whether it's a large float or a small float. It's just the consequences are different because of this feedback loop.
By the way, my ETF that I called Grandma's ETF isn't doing nearly as well as I thought it would when I launched it.
Yeah, I blame Elon. It's SpaceX related.
We talked on an earlier show about the race to see who was first, because a lot of the capital will go into that. And so it now appears that SpaceX is going to be first, or OpenAI and so on. What does this mean for Anthropic, which is clearly going to probably be last?
Yeah, I honestly don't. I mean, short, unless we actually do burn down capital markets, I don't think it'll matter. It'll just be a series of wild gyrations because of these small float IPOs causing a price spiral, causing all kinds of index arbitrage going on, and the markets will be just, wildly oscillating as a result of it. And you'll get these like uncapped prices and what have you. But these things are sufficiently non-overlapping that there's an appetite for all three of them, and it's massive. In part, I had someone tell me the other day, and I was just sort of thinking, this is madness. This guy had just been laid off by a major tech company, and he said, I'm going all in on all three of those IPOs because owning those is my future, because I no longer have a gig. And I'm like, you're basically going to, he said, yeah, if they're going to take all the jobs, then I want to be long those three. And I'm like, that you're going to see a lot of this very narrative-driven, if this is the future, I need to be long it at any price.
Dick, I have a question for you. So when you we talk a lot about the CEOs of these companies and how rich they're going to get, the countless billionaires that will be minted and the one trillionaire, unless you, of course, beat him to it, and then there's two. But
Three.
What did you see that we should expect from the IPO from the employees once they got rich? Like, what were some of the narratives and things that you saw happen?
Bailing like rats.
Like, we were already seeing, I remember I lived in San Francisco at the time, and I was on a journalist salary, and I remember we were trying to buy a house. We were trying to buy a 2-bedroom house. And we would go to these houses. There were lines of 400 people in Facebook and Twitter T-shirts and so on. And they were literally, I remember one guy was FaceTiming with a friend. He's like, I'm on my way to brunch, but I might buy this house on the way. What do you think? And like going for hundreds of thousands over asking, all cash. There was just a story this week about a house with 4 people, I believe, were murdered in or died in that went for 700,000 over asking.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
What happens? What psychologically? What are the downstream effects of all this, specifically on the employee base, and then also kind of economically in the places that they live?
Well, you just hit on one, which is, I mean, the house that sold for 700,000 over asking, where 4 people were murdered in it, is one thing. I think what was more.
Congratulations on winning that bid, Paul, by the way. Keep going.
I also bought the Amityville house, the one in Amityville Horror. I've got that one too. It's a whole portfolio of mass murder I've got. Anyways.
The more shocking price was that there was a home in San Francisco that was priced at $7.5 million that sold for $15 million. So double.
Wow.
And so that's while there's some secondary liquidity in these names and the Stripes and the others, but not yet tons of liquidity. Just wait to see what that's going to be like here in this next year when all 3 of these things are out. I mean, I think the SpaceX IPO, I think I read this correctly, it will mint 12 new billionaires and over 100 new centimillionaires.
Yeah.
There's not infinite real estate, as we know, in San Francisco or Austin or New York. Or the prices are just going to go through the roof on the most desirable places.
I was talking to an agent in Aspen who was saying that in the first, I think I told you this, Dick, but in the first half of the year, he's done 100 million gross in sales. Biggest 6 months ever, and it's on like 80% tech money. So there's like
I was talking to an agent in New York that told me the biggest same thing, and it's all tech. Yeah,
it's all tech. And here's the thing, though: you say to yourself, well, wait, they haven't gone public yet. Bankers are very clever about creating structures that allow you to pledge your stock in advance of the IPO. And you're not supposed to do it, but it doesn't really matter. It happens anyways. And so you can pledge your stock as collateral in advance of the IPO and then get a loan to actually make these kinds of purchases and then flip it post-IPO and satisfy the debt obligation. And now all of a sudden I'm the proud owner of a wildly overpriced Manhattan townhouse.
I literally know people who I've spoken to at some of these companies that are doing exactly those deals. They're selling their stock with a promissory note for 90% of the value that the potential IPO.
Yeah.
And they're going off and buying $17 million townhouses. And
yeah,
the thing
you've seen it all over.
The other thing that happens, and I would say that Elon and Sam are a little bit insulated from this because they've already been involved with public companies, whether it's obviously in Elon's case a bunch, and in Sam's case, he's sort of been through that, if you will, with Reddit and others in certain ways. Obviously not the CEO of Reddit, but understands what goes on. The interesting challenge for executive teams inside these companies is before the IPO, in the years before the IPO, in 2022, we were valued at, I'm making these numbers up, 2022, we were valued at $1 billion. And then in 2023, we were valued at $10 billion. And there's like you're worth $1 billion for a year until there's the next fundraise. And then, wow, that's neat. My stock is now worth 5 times as much. And then you're worth that much. And no one's going around on April 15th and going, hey, why is the stock worth $10 billion? It's like, well, that's just what we raised at, 8 months ago or 6 months ago or whatever. You get it. There's just you raise money and like, hey, we're now worth this much. Okay, great. And you multiply times the number of options you have and you go, great, I have this much money in potential wealth. The day you go public, that starts changing constantly. And I remember that after the Google IPO, there was this sort of ridiculous notion that I think Larry or Sergey said about like, hey, don't look at the stock price. Of course,
I remember that.
That's like saying you have a certain number of options times some magic number. Don't look at the magic number. Like, yeah, guess what? I'm going to look at the freaking magic number. I'm going to look at it all the time. So saying like, hey, don't focus on that right now. Like, yeah, easy for you to say. You just made $4 billion. You don't have to pay attention to it all the time. I'm trying to buy a house or whatever. You get it. So the challenge once you go public, maybe this is most important for Dario, who hasn't been, involved in running a public company, is the day the company goes public, the stock just starts to fluctuate for any reason or no reason. And, I remember specifically, vividly, and I've told this story a bunch of times, the price that we put $13 on the cover of the S1, and that was after 6-7 years of work. Then 2 weeks after the roadshow, we priced the stock at 26. So company doubled in value after 2 weeks for not really any other reason other than a lot of people wanted to own the stock. Yeah. And then day one, we closed at 43. So I got back and told the company like, hey, congratulations. I don't know what you guys did today, but you like doubled the value of the company.
But then they couldn't sell for 6 months.
Well, no. I mean, I said that by way of saying, hey, just remember, there's going to be days when the stock goes down by like whatever percent for no reason. Don't come up to the hallway and go like, what happened?
Right.
But guess. So I thought I was like super proud of myself because I've inoculated myself and the company from random fluctuation in the stock price. Guess what happens when the stock goes down 5% one day? People walk up to you and go, hey, what happened? So
what's going on?
There's this whole other management of expectations versus, hey, I thought I was, and then the worst thing is for folks like, I can imagine if you went and talked to Dylan Field, he would say, the worst thing possible was that the stock went up to like whatever, $170 on day one, because people that day multiplied their 1,000 options times $170 and were like, in 6 months, I will be worth this much money. And
I'm the king of Toledo.
And then you know what they say now? Like, when is the stock going to? I wonder when the stock will get back up to 170. Like that was a fake price, man. That was a fake price.
What are some of the? What are some of the?
That's the way people think.
What are some of the? Could you have any funny stories or any fascinating stories of some of the stuff people bought?
Oh, I've seen so many crazy things.
Like
no, I don't. Unfortunately,
I saw a guy on an IPO. I won't. Well.
I bought this ladder back here in my library.
He bought the goat book.
I bought the goat book. I bought don't forget, there's a whole cloven hoof section. I mean,
I know a guy who bought
just
4
like,
Ferraris and was pissed off that he didn't get the 4th one for free.
buy three, get one free.
Yeah. And
It's like,
so,
hey man, I got an ice cream guy down the street, and he does it.
Why wouldn't you do with my
what's the deal
Ferrari?
here, exactly?
If I get the
Right.
salted caramel and the strawberry and the chocolate, I get the vanilla kicker.
I should get the scoop.
I should get the scoop.
I know
How
a
do you guys
guy-
stay in business with a business like this? This is
I
crazy.
know a guy who we all
I
so
can't
great.
believe the dealership still exists with stupid business.
the Yelp review I will give it.
It was great.
We all know a guy who started his own microdosing chemist lab in his home so that he could make sure that his microdosing drugs were at the
Do
right
I know this
size.
person?
I can't say names.
I don't think.
Yeah,
Boy,
but,
okay. Later you'll tell us.
later I'll tell you.
Is this you?
Yes, because I've been involved in so many IPOs. All right, so here's a question I have for both of you, and I know
So,
the answer.
by the way, Nick,
Yeah.
before you go there, can
Yeah.
I just go somewhere? And this is maybe this is a question for Dick, but I mean, I've seen it too. Is like the next thing after they do the bad math of here we've gone public, here's how much I'm worth, and I need 3 Ferrari or 4 Ferraris for the price of 3, and whatever else they're up to. The next thing that happens is they say kind of F you, and they go because the stick you had to keep them motivated kind of
Wants
goes
to
away.
stop.
Like, I'll say, okay, I'm at Anthropic. I'm mission driven, baby. I'm going to be like AGI to the max and whatever else. And all of a sudden you got like
Yeah.
millions in the
you're-
bank account. And
yeah.
it's like, you know what? Maybe AGI later.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. AGI is all great and everything, but that yacht in Lipari is super, super compelling.
Right.
Yeah.
And this kitchen won't renovate itself. And, there's all of these important constraints.
Yeah.
And people become, and I've seen this so many times, people become so wildly distracted, especially at this scale, because they do the math that Dick was describing and they say, like, what am I doing? Why am I hanging around here? Maybe I can go to 1 day a week or whatever. And I'm going to work remotely because I'm going to spend most of my time in like Panama surfing and I'm building out an estate there or whatever else. And that has an impact on the companies. The companies now all of a sudden, because generally speaking, the people who have the largest takeaways are some of the most senior people who were there the earliest, and they haven't all had prior exits, and they're not all like sociopaths who are just keeping score forever. And they just bail. Whether they, actually physically bail or just emotionally bail, they bail.
Wasn't it you, Dick, that told me years and years ago that there was some guy at Google who they acquired his company, and he was like, I don't want to do this anymore, and he used to go sit on the roof every day, and
There were people there after Google acquired FeedBurn. I was starting to work at Google. There were people in Mountain View who were wealthy due to the being early employees or acquired, and the stock price continuing to go up, who would literally just play beach volleyball on the beach volleyball court between the 4 buildings at building 40, 41, 42, 43. And I would be like, that guy's been playing beach volleyball since 10 a.m. Is anyone going to say anything? And no one ever did.
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. But you see that. And I mean, and the data is really pretty compelling that you end up in this spiral post-IPO where it's actually a really, I mean, it's hard to feel much sympathy because of, all the centimillionaires being minted. But nevertheless, from the standpoint of the companies, with themselves, they change really dramatically. And, they generally speaking are a much less, ferociously competitive place. You get a different class of employees in there. It's really unpredictable what comes next.
But that didn't happen with, like, you have an instance where that didn't happen with a company like NVIDIA, who had gone public before and now had this new innovation, and so now people want to work
but
there
NVIDIA was fucked
ferociously.
before it wasn't fucked,
Yes,
right? I mean,
exactly.
NVIDIA was a mess for years and then unfucked itself, and then, in all likelihood will refuck itself. But it's these are all technical equity analysty things, by the way,
Yeah.
speaking as a former sell-side analyst.
The other thing that happens and is going to happen again, but it happened sort of after there was this string of, you remember, it was kind of sort of like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Uber, Dropbox, all that stuff sort of happened in a little window there. The other thing that's going to happen is that you get this the haves and the have-nots, the people that didn't make a ton of money in one of the 3 IPOs and are like, they just have this, this sucks. And now housing is like this $7 million house went for $15 million. And that $7.5 million was out of reach. And now it's double. My inability to buy the 7.5, is still an inability to buy the 7.5, but now it's 15. So you get this we're going to have this amplification of the lives of comparison and the haves and the have-nots that will be, if it's not, it already is, but it will be a lot worse.
And it'll be worse it'll be worse in part because I think people, well, we've all seen the statistics, but like AI is less popular than ICE, right? I mean, it's profoundly unpopular technology. The notion that this technology that is profoundly unpopular and is like eating up farmland near my town or whatever else is also making all these people rich who are then bidding me out of things and what have you. This is a really like a bad mixture. It's a really alchemical reaction, right?
Yeah, I want to say something about that. It is remarkable to me that these executives at these companies aren't out talking to America and helping them understand why it's important that we build these data centers. Let's just, for the sake of argument, ignore whether it is or isn't important that we build these data centers. The fact that they're not out there with here's why this is important.
They're not out there because it doesn't benefit their egos. Like, that's just the reality.
I mean,
I think they're not out there because they want plausible deniability. They want distance from it because they know it's unpopular.
Agree to disagree. I think they're not out there because they're not thinking. They're like, it's just going to happen. That's not my problem. Well, it is your problem because it's not going to happen if you don't change the narrative pretty soon. I mean, you've got these people. Let's use the stupidest one. The morons behind the Salt Lake City data center have decided to hire jackass #1, Kevin O'Leary, the guy from Shark Tank, who's a Canadian.
Hate those guys.
Who's out in public. By the way, he's doing interviews. He's out in public on both Tucker Carlson and on, whatever lefty podcasts saying like, oh, those people are like paid protesters who are being paid by the Chinese. Like, if you want to infuriate both the
average
and the average and the left-wing person in Utah, tell them that Kevin O'Leary thinks they're just paid protesters by the Chinese. Like, who thought it would be a good idea to hire the FTX spokesperson to come be the spokesperson for the data center in Utah? It's like the dumbest thing ever. So there needs to be a really quick flip in the way these things are being sold across America to Americans.
But
otherwise, they're not going to.
No, you're totally right. But part of the problem is, we saw the other one that's just as bad in many ways was Fermi, which was a data center complex in northern Texas, which was run by, it was associated with former Texas Governor Rick Perry, and he created this kind of entity that was going to be this massive gigawatt data center complex. They're going to have nuclear power. They're going to have natural gas and everything else. And they went public with nothing. And so they went public like last fall. Stock lost like 80-90% of its value. They went full MAGA on their conference calls because we all know that's good for earnings. And it's not, spoiler. And then now most of the management team has left and everyone's pretending they had nothing to do with it. So the moral of the story is, why are these kinds of people attracted to these projects? Because they just see them as apartment complexes, real estate with yield. Data centers are just apartment buildings to them, and there's yield and prime tenants. These hyperscalers are fantastic credits. And so they're like, I don't really care what's going on inside the data center. All I know is Google's good for it. It's a 12-year lease. The building's going to get paid. And so they just want the yield. And this is the disconnect. You got real estate speculators speculating because they've got prime credits paying them a high yield. And that's what brings in people who don't look at all familiar from a tech standpoint and are exactly the types like O'Leary and others that are making people go, honestly, this is the pitch?
Wait, what the larger thing going on here is that there is the haves and the have-nots, right? There is we talked about we just talked about the fact that 12 billionaires, 1 trillionaire. What is going to happen?
It's going to be it's a kind of a new version of the touching Christmas song, 1 trillionaire.
I like your version.
I read a story with one of the wealth managers talking about the number of people that will get rich from this and the rise of inequality. You've got AOC talking about how there shouldn't be billionaires and so on. This wealth manager.
Yeah, wait till she learns there's a trillionaire.
That it's completely 100% unsustainable as a society for this amount of wealth to flow to such a small number of people. Like, and then you're talking about, yes, people hate AI because they think it's going to take their job, which it probably is, unless you're a plumber or a hairdresser. It's all of this, Paul, you've talked about the fact with the data center thing that, it's this perfect storm of X, Y, and Z happening. Aren't these IPOs an even bigger perfect storm of the wealth inequality and,
of course.
I remember one last point on this. Yeah. One last point on this. I remember when the Twitter IPO happened and Facebook and everything, and I knew
I was going to get dragged into this.
And I wrote a story, the New York
Trillionaire,
Times.
You deserve it.
That at the moment of that IPO, there wasn't the value of homes went up so much in San Francisco. There wasn't a single home or apartment that a teacher, a firefighter, or a policeman could afford in San Francisco. And it's like, what happens? What happens when this takes place on a massive societal level that is 1,000 times more impactful than the social media ideas?
The history of societal breakdowns is kind of riddled with exactly that. This incredible growth in inequality is associated for the last 1,000 years. Whenever you see that, it often leads to breakdown because people feel like the spoils went to a relatively small number of people, often because of sweetheart deals. But in this case, I suppose it's slightly different. But nevertheless, the point being that it's profoundly destabilizing for society, and even worse now because people see it as a job losses. They see it for the look at the news today with respect to Intuit or Cisco or whoever else I saw. Meta was letting go people. I mean, whatever you think about the people and what they previously made from these companies or whether they have too many people, the notion that you can make a clean separation is just ridiculous. It's misguided. And that goes back. Dick's been spot on about this, that these guys are just clueless, that they just don't think through the consequences because they're too busy getting theirs.
I would And Nick, importantly, to the question you just asked, when you had the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers, they sort of realized, hey, we've got this civic duty to give back and build opera houses and create the Rockefeller, donate this 5,000 acres and append it onto Grand Teton National Park and build the, Rockefeller Center there because otherwise people are going to react precisely the way you guys just described.
Yeah.
The current group of, people we're talking about who are about to take these things out don't seem to exhibit any awareness of the fact that they better start, better start working on that, on that playhouse and that opera theater and that there's no realization or awareness. They better start helping people understand why this is good for them.
And it's worse though. It's worse because they're building bunkers.
Yeah. Not only that, they're also in court saying, "I know you are, but what am I?" And really?
With the exception of the Zuckerberg Hospital and the Costolo goat farm, I can't think of anything.
And Mark, you can rightly say Mark is someone who thought I got to start giving back, and I'm going to create, donate to.
But I can't think of anyone else that's really done it. I mean,
Benioff's donated.
Benioff, but has Bezos? I can't think of.
This is like the scene from the Romans. See, what have the Romans done for us? Sure, Benioff donated the hospital, but what else has Benioff done for us?
Useless.
The hospital and the children's ward but what
canals.
Why do you think that this generation doesn't think like that?
Too, inwardly focused and not outwardly focused. That's as simple as that.
And
look at
not so greatest generation problem.
Look at what they spend their time doing. Basically yelling at each other on Twitter.
Yeah.
Good
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Back and forth the whole time. But I just think they're not even the idea that, I think who is it? Is it Altman has some kind of bunker in New Zealand?
They all have bunkers. They call it
right.
They call it apocalypse insurance in San Francisco.
Yeah. So and Amadei's been talking about how, this is going to basically decimate. These messages really resonate with scared people. And I just think that there's basic PR they could be doing that it at least would help a little bit, even if it doesn't deal with the fundamental inequality problem. And it's remarkable to me how badly it's gone.
Can we talk about the bunkers for 1 second? I have a theory.
I thought you were about to say I have a bunker.
No,
I have a bunker.
I don't have a bunker. Sadly,
have a
I don't
theory?
have a bunker. I have a theory about the bunker, and it's based on Evan Osnos from the New Yorker, who was writing an article on the big tech preppers like Peter Thiel and Sam and other several years ago, and he had a conversation with me on the phone. He's like, "What do you think about all that?" And our conversation, I was basically like, I think if things really go south and it hits the proverbial fan, if you've got a bunker in Big Sur and with the gold bars in the basement and your own generator and guns and canned food, the thugs on the street are going to go see the house up there with the lights on. That's where all the gold bars are.
Yeah, you just became Vons.
You just became
I think if things really, really go wrong, you want to know how to remove your own appendix and skin a squirrel, and the bunker is not going to be that helpful.
No, I don't think so.
Also, if you had a bunker, would you want to fucking live there? Like, would you literally want to spend the rest of your life, even if it was fortified and you had your gold bars protected?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to.
No, if Brockman and Sam are in the bunker, I think it's around 72 hours before one of them's like, I wish this guy would shut the fuck up.
It's too funny. It would be awful. But, you're trying to be logical about something that's really just, I don't know. It's this fear that they think society's heading towards this inflection where it's me versus you and it's all against all and all this kind of thing. And the message resonates with people. And they're like, okay, if he's saying that, then I'm in. I get it. I should be like, getting my cans and shotguns and everything else because these guys, they can't protect themselves. What am I to think I can? So.
Yeah.
And on that touching note about bunkers and the end of civilization, thus ends another episode
of the depressing
of Doomers Are Us. No, but you know what though? In all seriousness, I think putting aside the whole burn the atmosphere thing, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens with, to go back to the beginning, with a 40% index fund market that has to soak up four of the largest IPOs in history, and everybody has their head in their ass about it. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And then all of a sudden, of course, something big and stupid will break, and it'll be like, who could have known?
Who could have known?
We could have known.
By interesting, Paul means I can't wait personally
to watch from my bunker.
To watch my bunker.
All right. That's true, actually.
Dick, I just want to wish you luck in the race against Elon to first trillionaire. I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.